All right. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for logging in today to participate in this webinar. My name is Susan Harris, and I am the Executive Director of the Joint Educational Project at the University of Southern California in Los Angeles, California. And I'm also on the board of SLCE and co-chair, along with my friend and colleague, Carmen Parati, of the Scholarship and Publications Committee, which is the host of this event today. What we have in mind today is to bring together 4 incredible women who are going to speak about their experiences working at the intersection of service learning and community engagement and scholarship in STEM fields. This topic and this webinar kind of came together as a result of something that happened at the SLCE conference in South Africa a couple of months ago. Stephen Chan, who is an engineer at Hong Kong Polytechnic University, made a comment during one of the keynote sessions about how there weren't very many engineers in the room. And Talita, one of our speakers today, was there, and she raised her hand, identifying herself as one of the engineers in the room. And then Berta and I were able to connect after the conference and talked about ways that we might support the work that she's doing in Spain and how we might, spread the word about that a little bit. And as we were talking, we thought it might be interesting to bring together the unusual suspects in service learning and community engagement, as well as in STEM, and bring together 4 women who are doing really amazing work in this field to talk about their journeys into the work, some of the barriers and facilitators of the work, and how the unique contexts in which they're working have shaped that. And so it really is my pleasure today to introduce these women to you. And our plan, each of the women will do kind of a brief introduction. And I've asked each of them to select an image or collection of images that capture the spirit of the work that they are doing. And so each one will talk about their work and describe this image. Then we'll have some guided conversation, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience at the end. And we'll conclude with a couple of announcements for SLCE. So that is our plan. And again, our speakers today are DJ Cast, who is the Director of STEM Education at the USC Joint Educational Project. So she's my colleague at USC. Berta Paz Laredo is an associate professor of physiotherapy at the University of the Balearic Islands in Spain, which sounds like a very delightful place to be right now. Perla Lahana Myers is a professor of mathematics and the executive director of the Jacobs Institute for Innovation in Education at the University of San Diego. And Talita Torrezan is a PhD candidate in materials science and engineering at the Federal University of São Carlos in Brazil. So with that, I will turn it over to DJ to introduce herself.
Good morning, everyone. So my name is DJ Cass, and I'm the director of the STEM education programs at JEP, or the Joint Educational Project. And I wanted to give a little bit of the service learning context that JEP has within Los Angeles. And can you go back to my slide, please? But so JEP is actually the oldest service learning program in the US, and it was established in 1972. And how it functions is provide service learning opportunities for thousands of undergrads every year, both in local schools. We're partnered with about 20 local schools here in Los Angeles, and with about 75 local nonprofits where we also facilitate them doing community service. We have a few pre-professional programs like the Pre-Law Project and the pre-medical program, the Trojan Health Volunteers, that provide services to low-income legal and medical clinics. And we also have our Readers Plus that does work study tutoring in math and reading in some of our partner schools as well. And then I saved the STEM programs for last because, biased. But so I manage 3 STEM programs within JEP. There's the Young Scientist program, our medical STEM program, and Wonder Kids. The first two are during the school day in partnership with about 7 local schools. So they're free STEM programs for our partners. We provide all of the curriculum, we provide all of the supplies to do hands-on science experiments, kind of like this photo here, which is some of our students doing an ocean acidification lesson. And we also provide a university student that's majoring in STEM that has been taught science communication, and we send them into about 80 classrooms a week for 20 weeks. And so that's kind of where some of the service learning, community engagement, and STEM comes from, because we were equipping these undergrads with some of these science communication skills to be able to talk to a variety of different audiences. Most of our programs are focused at the K through 5 level, but we do dabble in middle school and high school. And there is an entire reflective curriculum that the students also do in regards to both the program, but also different societal issues that relate to the work that we're doing. I'm definitely a practitioner by nature. I feel like there's a bunch of researchers in this crew, but I'm the odd duck that's doing mostly practitioner work, especially in curriculum development and making and publishing those curriculum in educational journals. And I see Rochelle. I'm glad there's a fellow practitioner in there with me. And but we do engage with scholarly research, especially around like culturally relevant pedagogy and science identity development. We have Draw the Scientist test that we do every year at the beginning and end of our program. And when we started this, 90% of our drawings were of white male scientists. And this last year, we're at about 51% of our drawings are of female scientists. And we've introduced new colors, like skin tone colors. So we've also seen a major increase in students drawing both scientists of color, but also themselves, because the demographics of the students that we serve is predominantly Latinx and Black. You also asked how I got into this. I'm probably at the 2.5 minutes, but I was also an undergrad in this program way back when. It's like almost 20, or like 15 years ago now. So I did this program, but I did both the JEP program. I did YSP as an undergrad, and then helped create Wonder Kids with them, which is our after-school STEM career program.
Thank you. Move to Berta next.
Yeah, hello everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Yeah, I mean, when you were showing this picture, DJ, about these kids, I thought, wow, this is my face when I heard about service learning. I was like, wow, I think I'm doing that. But then I was like more involved into it, and I said, I think I have to learn a bit. So I'm working with service learning for 15 years now at my university. But Talita, I always say that first time I was aware of something about linking higher education with the community was in 97 in a visit that they made to Brazil, to Espírito Santo, Vitoria. And from at that time I thought, wow, this is so difficult to do because universities, as long as I know, they are like separate from the community. So how to manage with that? And from that time, I was always trying to bring the community into my classes with my students. And I was writing about that, and I was writing about, how important these activities are for my students. They are learning so much, being in touch with community organizations and trying to develop their works related to their needs. But I was not putting this name or any name at that. I thought that was just being a little bit like out of the box. And then when I was getting more involved into that was when I started to develop service learning programs. In the very beginning, very much following all the features, all the characteristics for service learning projects with my students, very much connected with associations in the community, patient associations or family of patients, and linked to community, health, ethics, and so on. But here that you see in this picture is like a bunch of information and a lot of pictures. And this is a little bit what happened in the last years. And due to the fact that I was asked to participate in a service learning project, that in the very beginning I thought that was nothing in common with physiotherapy, but I always understood physiotherapy from a very broad perspective, and also my personal background goes into different disciplines. So I thought, wow, this organization is working with wool produced in Mallorca. What is, being related to us? And then I found that in our curriculum, we have these environmental issues that nobody was really taking care of that. We saw that it's important, but I was asking and nobody was like focus on that. So somehow this work that I can talk a little bit more later was opening a door to rethinking the way that I was understanding service learning. Try to always have partners that were very much connected in a direct way with the work that I was doing and with the curriculum, and helped me to expand a bit the perception of the work that could be done to not only develop service learning as is included in the curriculum, but using service learning as a driver to update, change, and regenerate the curriculum. So from this single experience that was asking us about what could we do with service learning to put in value that in Mallorca, in the times of pandemics, we are living in a small island in the Mediterranean. A lot of stuff is coming from the mainland and other countries. And suddenly we realize we have these fantastic fibers here being, used and that were being developed in the very, last decades, using for many different purposes. How can we use that in health sciences and taking into consideration the sustainability approach to the health system? So we started with a service learning project with the students, and from that we are just changing the curriculum. So we are involved in so many different organizations with planetary health, environmental physiotherapy, also another Erasmus project linking the university with the rural environment. And my students are rethinking how they can have like a more sustainable way to work with physiotherapy, also linked with other local organizations. So this mess of pictures that is even my daughter there with this pink coat trying to work with this wool purposes. I think this changed the way I understand service learning and made me also be a little bit more open about the possibilities that service learning can bring to you and to your faculty and to the curriculum when you are a little bit open about the possibilities. So here we were facing these materials that they were wool, and that was linked to sustainability, was linked to the properties of these wool fibers, so linked with my colleagues from chemics and physics. So this make a lot different the perspectives of biomechanics, for example, or biochemics that we already have in the curriculum, but we were not embracing that from another perspective that this project brought into our curriculum. So I'm very glad to be here in this group, like, helping also to think a little bit more out of the box and seeing that these boundaries that sometimes the curriculum fits to us, they are somehow possible to also overcome and see other possibilities to bring our students more connected to the community and also the culture aspects that go connected to service learning. So I'm very pleased to be here and open to talk more about these projects later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Berta. Next, we'll move to Perla.
Thank you so much. It's so nice to be here and see you all. I'll start by sharing a little bit about how I became involved in service learning in the beginning. When I got hired at the University of San Diego to be in the mathematics department, my department decided that I would be teaching the courses for future teachers. And the truth is, I had no idea how to do that. I actually even found out that I didn't even know the elementary mathematics, that I was going to teach them at the deep level that they needed to learn it. But most importantly, many of the teachers I had heard from my department had not had positive experiences in mathematics. And so many of them were not so happy to teach those courses. And so one of my colleagues said to me, if the teachers know that, what's really wonderful about future teachers and teachers in general is that if they know that what they do will enhance the lives of their students, they will do absolutely anything. And so I was at a luncheon. We have an amazing Center for Community Engagement and Social Action, like JEP at USD. And I ran in at the director at the time was Judy Rauner, who some of you might know, a pioneer also in this area. And she said, you have to do community service learning. And so that's how I got in there. I said, let's find a way to engage teachers so that they know that what they do will actually be important for their students. So I created these math nights. So teachers would create activities for the math nights that were mathematical, and I call them worthwhile mathematical tasks. And so it was tasks where the students would engage in like exploring and with their families and thinking about things and getting excited and being pushed to think very deeply. And the teachers could see how amazing it was that the kids would get excited about these things. And so they were more excited themselves to engage in the mathematics. And so that's how I got involved, and I got hooked. So everything I did from then on, or I have done from then on, has come from that first experience. I feel that it's a win-win situation for everyone involved. And so from then I've done like all these things over here, engaging kids in mathematics, in STEM, in all kinds of experiential opportunities so that they see that what they're doing makes sense in the world. And so right now I'm at the Jacobs Institute for Innovation in Education. Our goal, our focus is to amplify youth voice and leadership, cultivate community-rooted collaboration and belonging, bridge research and practice, innovate through STEM and emerging technologies, and foster lifelong joyful learning. So everything we do is about service, learning, community engagement.
Thank you so much, Perla. And last but not least, Talita.
Hi, everyone. Wow. First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. It's a great pleasure to be here next to such inspiring and powerful human. As I've told them, wow, I see myself as a learner in this field. So I'm truly honored to learn with you. Thank you again. I'm Talita, proudly from Brazil. And I chose this powerful quote by Paulo Freire because I feel it really reflects what I believe in. I'm a materials engineer by training, but I would say I'm a humanistic engineer at heart. After nearly 8 years in the industry, leading innovations for sustainability, I felt a strong urge that led me to a life-changing moment. I realized that if you really want to transform things, not just products and materials, but actually the mindset behind them, then we should start from the beginning. We should start with education. It's necessary to rethink the way we educate those who create our technologies, develop our materials and products, shape our future. So I decided to go back to academia in order to pursue a PhD with a main question in mind. How can we prepare more conscious engineers, more humanistic engineers, professionals who critically evaluate the consequence of their technologies, caring about the impact on society and on the environment, not only the usual techno-economical concerns. On this new research path, I came to understand that if you want to STEM professionals who can build a more just and sustainable future, we should help these STEM students develop their humanistic competences, such as empathy, ethics, and critical reflection, for example, while they are still in their undergraduate years. And I also discovered that one of the most powerful ways to do that, nurturing these kinds of competences, is through service learning and community engagement. That's why my PhD research is building an educational framework for Brazil based on service learning and community engagement, integrating this approach into engineering curricula. The main goal is to help educate engineers who not only design excellent materials, but who also question, listen, and act with a responsibility toward people and the planet. So that's my perspective and a little bit about my journey. Thank you once again. I'm really glad for this opportunity for sure, and a little bit nervous too.
Thank you so much, Talita. Like I said, these are 4 really amazing women doing such incredible work that integrates the humanities and the arts as well as STEM. And I'm just so excited to have you all in the same room. So I have 4 sets of questions that I will sort of start with one of our panelists to talk about, and hopefully others will be able to chime in. And we have about 25 minutes or so for discussion, and then we'll open it up for questions from the audience. But my first question is about the context, because each of you are working in very different contexts. Southern California for Perla and DJ, in Europe for Berta, in Brazil for Talita, cities, rural areas. And so my question is, could you, and Berta, I'm going to direct this one to you first, because you talked a little bit about this in your intro, but I'm curious about how, an example of your community engagement work and how the local context shaped that, but then also on the flip side, how your work in turn shapes the context itself, the institution, the region. How do these 2 things work together in terms of context and service learning community engagement in STEM?
Yeah, thank you, Susan. I was introducing a bit the work that I'm doing here at the university, and I have to say that I always understood service learning and community engagement as an institutional task. I mean, not only for an independent subject or one teacher or professor here or there. I mean, we're working with community partners, so I'm very much thinking about what is the response of the institution, and also how this is linked to my students and the curriculum as a whole. So also taking into consideration this reciprocity that is, included in service learning, what I'm giving and my students are giving, but also how I'm getting the message from the context, because many times we are just so happy about the work that we are giving through our activities, and how interesting is the impact that we are getting in the community, that sometimes I thought that we're not putting the light into what do I have to change. So this is in the last year, my focus is what is the community telling me? So they're having some needs there. Why do they have that? Why my students can move into a way that we are not only training, but we are enhancing a personal development that makes them more aware of what is going on. I also think that in the community university has also many people. Some of them, they have like a very thin skin. So when something comes to you, you are being has to react and do something. And sometimes that is not the best decision in your professional career terms, but is you can't avoid to do that. So I have to say that this link to having this connection with the rural field in the Balearic Islands, getting more understanding about how the island was moving from a kind of economy into the more solely touristic economy, the risk with pandemics, also the need for students to go a little bit beyond all of the discipline, to have a more systemic approach to the challenges that we're facing. That was make me think, okay, who else is working on this field? So I was getting more involved into service learning now, into the Spanish Association of Service Learning and the European one, also creating an innovation unit for sustainable development, health and social justice through service learning. So creating the structures, and also to starting to link that into research and transferability in a way that others can follow, you know? So I thought that could be a good opportunity to link to other organizations for physiotherapy, and beyond physiotherapy to connect with planetary health, and other way to create a framework that allows so many students to think, oh, this that I'm doing, it fits with what I'm with what is expected, and it is not like a strange thing. And if that's good, because maybe you have to rethink the way you understand this. We are going into a way with another kind of boundaries to the discipline world, with artificial intelligence, everything that's going there. So if we can make students from different disciplines more aware that the relationship is important, even that is so important for service learning, I think that can create these changes that may look little for us, but thanks to an event like this, we put a little bit of light and say, wow, maybe it's something that can be replicated and we can learn from others and make this little change a little bit more global. So this is how I understand the work that I'm doing. I don't know if others can, share something of these thoughts.
I like how Berta's doing things on both like the local scale and on the global scale. For me, we're hyper local. JAP has built up these partnerships with schools and community partners. And 20 years ago, they reached out and said, our schools are really struggling with science at the elementary level. And so JEP submitted a grant to a local foundation, like as seed funding for these STEM programs 20 years ago. And just to be able to provide some of that support. And so next year in 2026, we're actually celebrating the 20-year anniversary of the programs and how much they've expanded, and they've impacted over like 33,000 students since its inception now.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. Very nice.
Thank you both. I think I'll move to the next section. And we've heard a little bit about some of these issues, but just to really name it, what are some of the barriers that each of you have faced coming into this work, as well as the facilitators? What kinds of strategies or supports have you encountered that have made this work easier, both in terms of being the unusual suspects, in terms of being women in STEM, but also being in STEM in service learning and community engagement? So Perla, I'm going to direct this question first to you.
I guess I will share that I've been incredibly lucky, and I can't wait to hear from others. I've been incredibly lucky because when I first came, my dean was very supportive of the Boyer model of scholarship, which values 4 domains, so discovery, integration, application, and teaching. And so that was amazing to have somebody who really valued my work in such a way. And my department was also really, really supportive. Additionally, the university has a mission which is focused on anchoring. Basically, we're an anchor institution, and so engaging in community service learning and community engagement is really important to the university. And as far as women, we've had amazing women role models within the university. So women dean and women provost and vice president of student affairs. So in those areas, I feel so lucky. Oh, plus we have an amazing Center for Community Engagement and Social Action, right? So the support systems are there. My department is very lucky. There are other departments where we're working to enhance that ability for faculty to engage in this work in a comfortable and supported way. So there is still work to be done there. As far as strategies, I think that the most important strategies have been engaging with partners. So engaging with community, learning from them, and learning together to create change. And so that has been amazing. And actually, more importantly, engaging within the university. So, for example, we have an initiative where we got promised some money for students. And the reason that happened is because one of the project collaborators was in charge of that area of campus, right? So it really just engaging with the people who love this kind of work around the university, the student support services, our Mulvaney Center for Community Engagement, the Center for Educational Excellence, the professors in STEM classes who bring their students to be part of experiences. So I guess engaging with the amazing people we have around to create really impactful experiences. And I can't wait to hear about how you all strategize.
Wow, I really second what Paula said. And to add something more, in my experience, actually, the barriers are mostly cultural. So not always said, but felt. Engineer, like many STEM fields in Brazil, it still carries stereotypes shaped by a male-dominated culture where technical mastery is valued, while social concerns, for example, they're often seen as soft or even fluffy. So when we bring community engagement or social justice into this space, it can be treated as it didn't belong to real engineering or to real STEM. But it's curious because what we build, for example, in my case, as engineers, always affects people and the planet. So for me, engineer is by nature social and political. And in Brazil, it's interesting to say that this view is starting to gain ground. Recent national directions from the government are encouraging a more holistic engineer education, one that includes social, ethical, and environmental responsibilities. It's a promising moment for sure, despite resistance. But through this landscape, what has helped me is building, as Paula said, building collaborative connections, finding people who share the same commitment to rethinking STEM, and also structure this work in a rigorous scientific research, showing that it's not soft, but credible and essential for our future, you know?
Talita, I'm going to ask you to build on what you were just talking about. Given that SLCE is an organization that focuses on research and scholarship, and the fact that you have each come into your fields at different points in time. I mean, Talita, you're currently a PhD student. Perla, I won't say how many years ago you got your PhD, but you've entered the field at different times and things have changed in terms of what's understood as acceptable methods. And certainly in my own field, in sociology, that's the case. But I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about how your work challenges, informs, changes notions of what is acceptable in terms of STEM scholarship. And in particular, if you integrate qualitative or participatory methods, other kinds of things that might be drawn more from the humanities or the social sciences into your work as an engineer.
Wow, thank you for this question, actually, because it really touches me. I'm still in this process of transformation. I was used to doing research with materials, not with people. It means design experiments in the lab, create and improve materials to be more eco-friendly, while keeping the same technical performance. Everything was measured in numbers and graphs. And looking back, it would have been easier to stay there. My whole academic and professional path was built on that. But at some point, I realized that I was changing. I no longer wanted it to transform materials only. I wanted it to have transformed people. So I had to learn to do research in a completely different way, collecting data not from materials, but from voices and experiences. Instead of only measuring, I had to start listening through interviews, stories, reflections. I would just say that for me, this is not only a research process, but also it's an educational journey, one that I'm learning through every day. Just to give you a sense, this year, I had to submit my research to the Ethics Committee for Human Studies. And it actually became the first PhD project in our material science and engineer program ever submitted and approved. But that says a lot about how new this path is for us. And to be honest, it hasn't been easy, but it's been beautiful because it's been changing how our program understands impact and evidence, not only as measurable outcomes in numbers, but as relationships, co-creations, critical reflections, and for sure transformations. I hope my work can help open doors for other initiatives, helping showing my STEM colleagues that our research can be scientifically rigorous and human at the same time. It's about and, not or.
Does anyone else want to weigh in on this issue?
Sure. For me, when I was in doing my master's in STEM, I was just super discouraged by the faculty that were in that department. The department itself had about 35 people in it. Out of the 35, there were only 5 women and 1 lone person of color. And of the 5 women, only 1 of them had tenure. And so I looked around, I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, they're, they're clearly like struggling and not thriving. I don't want to stay here. I don't see them succeeding. And so for me, I actually found amazing role models and mentors, both in ocean education initially, and then in STEM education as well, that really helped drive my path forward this way, and how they had really thought about the community context. I had taught a community marine biology class on a grant that I was with on them. And the grant included, it was a night class, so it was after work, and it included dinner, and so the student, it was family, it was targeted to fourth and fifth graders, but they brought families. Um, and there was a free like a field trip and a bus to the ocean, and almost all the students in the class, even though we're only like 15 minutes away from the ocean, had never actually seen the ocean. And so I think really finding your people, finding people that are doing what you want to be doing, and like attaching like a barnacle, and like getting to know them really well. Networking with them. I've added a few of you on LinkedIn. Beware this talking on the background. And but really like find your people and find how they got there, and maybe seeing, is that your path as well?
Love how the marine biologist talks about attaching like a barnacle. DJ, maybe you could extend a little bit about what you're talking about. The last set of questions is really about broadening the vision of STEM, creating pathways into the field for underrepresented groups. So can you say a little bit about how your work invites students, both higher education students as well as K-12 students, into this field?
Definitely. And that broadening participation has really come in multiple different ways. It's prioritizing guest speakers that really look like our students throughout all of our STEM program. We have quite a few opportunities for speakers to come in. And so prioritizing both women that are in STEM and scientists of color. We have really looked at what we put in front of students, and so making sure that all of the images, like the PowerPoint slides, worksheets, etc., also have pictures of student or of scientists that look like our children. We have a medical curriculum. There's so many diagnosi. I hope that's the right word. But like we have a dermatology unit, and so seeing what dermatological issues look like on darker skin tones, because all of the present literature is predominantly on white skin. And even when we're looking at, just being really cognizant of literally what are we saying by what we're putting in front of our students, and valuing who they are. And that also led to our Wonder Kids program was originally based within a literacy program. And so at the elementary level, the teacher does everything. They have to do science, they have to do math, they have to do reading. They do everything all day with, their set of kids. And so the curriculum for that program was set up that same way. It's a hands-on science activity with a book and a math link. And the last data that I saw, I think in 2020, shows that 40% of all kids' books, even still right now, feature white main characters. 20% feature non-human characters like cuddly animals and trains. And that literally every other skin tone is in the last like 12 to 15%. And so me trying to find niche science kids books that look like our children are not really out there. And so we actually worked with a publisher to make our own set of books. And they're digitally available for free for anyone that would like to read them. And the publisher also has sent us like 120,000 copies to distribute to all of the low-income families that we work with, both through JEP and our schools. And I'd love to put that link in the chat for you all, because I love they do a lot of this work in this space in general, but there's multimedia components on this landing page. There's lesson plans for these 10 different STEM careers. It follows 3 main characters, a Asian male character, a Black female character, and a Latina female character. And then the books also interview an actual scientist of color in that field as well. So you got science, you got representation, you got math links, and you have reading all in one. And so if you're interested, send me an email, because I am keeping track of the people that would like bulk book requests, because I think once we hit 50,000 requests, they'll reprint it again. It's also in fully translated into Spanish for when we were working on our project, because our community context has 40% English language learners 100% of which is Spanish speaking. But I have since seen that it's been translated both into Hindi and Marathi.
Thank you so much, DJ. If anyone else, if no one else wants to chime in on this particular subject, I think we could open it up to our audience for questions. And as Carmen suggested, you can post questions in the chat. We also had a few questions that were posed in the registration, and I think I'll turn it over to Carmen to direct that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and unpin some folks to open up so we could all see each other. There's so much to unpack here, and thanks for sharing. As Susan said, we've had a couple questions submitted when participants registered, and you all hit most of those questions in your talk. But there's one that I want to raise that I'm interested in diving in a little bit more. And then, as I said in the chat, if you have additional questions, please feel free to drop them there, or you could unmute yourself. One of the questions, you touched on this a little bit, was about partnerships and how typical service learning and community engagement partnerships tend to be with nonprofits, government agencies, K through 12 schools, for example, and that your partnerships might extend beyond, for example, to STEM-based larger corporations. And if you could talk a little bit about how do you kind of grapple with partnerships and make sense of partnerships when we kind of potentially move into that for-profit realm. And the person who asked this question is on the call, Jenna Pearsall. Excuse me if I'm saying your last name wrong. So feel free to unmute yourself if you want and clarify if I did not get that correctly. Yeah, go for it, DJ.
I'd love to tackle that one. So we hodgepodge funding like no tomorrow. And so part of that is also reaching out to a lot of different corporations and their CSR, their, what is it? Community social responsibility. They got monies. And it's reaching out to the various either local or national, even sometimes global corporate partners that want to do work in this space. And so we have quite a few. We've had an amazing relationship with Hyundai. They really focus on STEM education well and have been an amazing partner. We've partnered with corporation like Raytheon, different banks as well. Like it really depends on who's in your local context and wanting to also fund the work. So part of how we've done that is through CSR and having them give us money to do the work. We also occasionally will host workshops where they bring in some of their workers as well to like demonstrate the various careers in STEM that might be occurring within their company. And so once a year we've had like this last month we did a hydrogen car workshop where the students built little water powered cars and raced them, but then they also brought, like, Hyundai has its own actual life-size car that the students got to sit in, and actually they didn't drive it, don't worry, but it was really cool. It actually has a fingerprint turn on option for the car. So I was like, hey, I'm trying to like get the stop theft of Hyundai vehicles. Very nice. But yes, that the CSR piece has been crucial for our programs for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, DJ. Anyone else want to chime in on that particular question? Okay. And thanks, Jen, I see you're in the chat here. Before I ask another question, does anyone in the participants want to unmute themselves? And do you have a question you want to ask our participants?
I have a question, and you can let me know if you've already answered it in certain ways, but I just wanted to like ask curiously, just in the dreamer perspective, like if you're considering the evolving role of like practitioner scholars, DJ, I love that because I consider myself a practitioner, and I see John Logson on here, and he talked about a year or two ago about being a pracademic. What do you see the practitioner scholars' roles in shaping the field of community engagement, research and practice going forward? Where do you see this going in terms of like STEM and particular, like how can we support your work and your role in IRSlice, but also in our different spaces across the global SLCE field?
I think for me, I would love to be doing more in this space, but I think we're definitely at some both red tape issues and just capacity issues itself. We work with such a large school district and we have MOUs with our schools, but data collection from minors has become extremely difficult. And so some of what we're at least transitioning towards is trying to get some data that we can publish from our undergrads and their transformation experiences through the reflective curriculum that they go through, and kind of indirectly seeing what they're then getting from students versus trying to get data from students themselves. It's definitely a capacity issue for us. But I would love to be doing much, much more in that space, which is why most of what we do publish is curriculum, like development, curriculum application, curriculum, like beta testing in classrooms, instead of some of the other places I would like to be around, like science identity and stuff like that.
I love the question. I feel that that's an opportunity to collaborate because the different voices of the practitioner, the scholar, the educator, and all of us together can really create something wonderful, right? Just
Yeah, I also think that it's a good opportunity to work with these projects that engage education from different levels. I mean, we have the time as everybody one has. So if we are doing things, we don't have time to write about the things that we are doing. So sometimes we need some support on that. And people say, well, Berta, but you haven't not published about that. I said, yeah, because I was doing that, So this is an example of what iSlides can do for us. That is, giving us a speaker to just, share and do so, but also the kind of connection, because sometimes even when we look like very excited with a lot of energy for doing a lot of things, of course, at the end of the day we say, oh, but that is a huge workload. So having this feeling that other people is doing the same, or sometimes are struggling but also enjoying this process, I think is very, very helpful. I really, I feel very connected with many of the comments that you were saying here. And for example, DJ, we were just discussing this week about these issues with our students, with this color of skin, these gender issues also related to healthcare. So many aspects that when you look at to the body as a machine, Dalita, we don't need to talk about that, because the body is a machine, but it's not. The body is a person, and then is where connect with so many things. And also, as Perla said, how important is that we feel that somebody's in our back, because sometimes we get into the projects and we think, oh, we have all this behind me, my back, and then you look back and there's nobody, because people just left to their other issues. So the power that organization of iSlice has is amazing, just for the fact of being there. So that is very important. And also just to collect some of these examples of practices can be very inspiring for others in different contexts. And that is very, very important, the possibility for transferability for other contexts.
Thanks, Berta, and thanks, Rochelle, for that question. We have probably time for just one more question, as I know Susan has some closeout announcements. I'm going to ask maybe if each of you could just take 20 or 30 seconds each, and given the conversation today and some of the conversations around issues with equity and gender and race, just thinking about what advice might you have for early career scholars, scholar practitioners, pracademics, whatever we might call them. What advice might you have for folks who are trying to integrate service and community engagement, equity, and science education moving forward into the future?
I
we start
can
with-
say something.
Go for it, Paula. Yeah.
I love what DJ said about creating spaces that welcome people as they are. And so I love for people to come as their authentic selves, have the music that sounds familiar, and the vision, like the pictures that sound familiar, and the people around them, role models that sound familiar. And so I feel that's one way to create equity in 20 seconds.
Thanks, Perla.
I think, at least for those of us living in the US, to keep going, stay strong. This is really hope this is temporary. And that the fight will continue because equity is crucial.
Thanks, DJ.
Yeah, I'm a very positive person, just just like that, and I don't think there are many possibilities to make that change. But also I understand that we are struggling in our own institutions and countries and regions. So I really think that trying to work with the students in this reflective manner that server learning allows, and listening to them, because this silence is wonderful in education, allows others to speak. And I think that service learning allows this. So I'm also thankful for the people that is doing research on service learning and gives me the possibility to use their instruments and what they're doing in my work. And also that helps my students.
Thanks, Berta.
Wow. I'll close with some food for thought. When we make changes in STEM education through service learning and community engagement, I totally believe we change the stories that shape our planet. And that's where real transformation begins. So keep doing, keep going, and find your people, and we can do all the things together.
Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Susan to close us out.
Wow, thank you all so very much. I knew this would be an amazing conversation, bringing the four of you together. I really appreciate you all taking the time to do so. Just want to share the screen again. This slide has a couple of QR codes. So the announcements, the IJR slice, that's what that should say there. The International Journal for Research on Service Learning and Community Engagement, published by IRSlice, is seeking members for its editorial board. If you're interested, there's more information available on the IJRSlice website, which you can access via that QR code. Also, the practitioner scholar community will have a new cohort starting in the spring of 2026. And they have an interest form, super quick and easy. If you're interested in learning more, you can fill out that form, and they'll be sure to include you on all of the information that's sent out about that. There's more to say about both of those things, but I think for anyone interested in gaining support in doing this practice scholar connection, the PSC is a wonderful resource for folks. It helps people scope out projects and get support in that. And I also would encourage anyone who's interested in learning more about the editorial process to consider taking part in the review process for manuscripts and other things related to the journal. We really need all voices, all people, given the diversity of our field and how many disciplines it spans and intersects with. So I encourage you all to do that. Thank you all so much again for attending today. Thank you to our four panelists for participating. This session was recorded, so we will have that available to folks later on. And with that, I will say good evening or good morning, or thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan and Carmen, for hosting. Have a good
Thanks
one. everyone.
all. Have a good rest of your week.